ambiguous title. ISITE's been very good in integrating CMSs and doing a very almost kind of cookie cutter approach to a lot of our projects. And in the last couple of years, our projects have grown in scale, grown in complexity, and we've realized that that standard approach really just kind of doesn't cut it at this point. So we've had to kind of adapt and come up with new ways of doing things, and that's what this presentation is mostly about. I'm going to be touching on, I'm going to be touching a lot on design in the browser. The first thing I think we kind of need to do is rethink what design means. Colin O'Neill has really pushed this concept that we're all designers, and I fully am in line with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to put up a Steve Jobs quote right here. Design is just kind of how it works. And traditionally at ISITE, we've thought of design as Patrick and his team, and now maybe a little bit UX. But it's not just Photoshop and Illustrator and comps, it's the whole thing. And we're all a big part of that. Tech is we're the instrument that actually builds it all and puts it forth. And if we're not a part of the design process, we're kind of, I don't know, a tool set and not much more. So we're kind of changing how we think about that. Chris Pullman at PBS, who I think is a really brilliant speaker, he has this quote that I pulled, design is not the narrow application of formal skills, it's really a way of thinking. And I think that really applies to tech here. We all are designers. We all are front-end developers. I kind of think Waterfall sucks. It's really great, and we used it really well in years past when our projects were, again, kind of cookie cutter. What we're dealing with now, though, is a lot more complex, a lot more application work. It's a lot more than just implementing a CMS and moving on. We're engaging with our clients in more of a partnership, and Waterfall doesn't really support that relationship very well. The whole concept of Waterfall is, handing things off from one discipline and one silo to the next. That's never going to completely go away. There's always going to be times when Cam's going to have to just sit down and crank out some code. Same with me. Same with, creative, just really putting things together. So I would probably do a Venn diagram here, but I'm really tired of seeing Venn diagrams in our presentations. We do a lot of them. But what we're seeing is a lot of overlap. And it's not just distinct silos, and handoffs really, it's a gray line rather than it's a gray line now. In tech, traditionally under the waterfall method, we spend a lot of our time getting clarification, making assumptions, waiting on answers, asking questions, setting up meetings, sending out emails, all that kind of stuff. Point being, we were not coding. And this new approach, we're doing a lot of prototyping, we're doing a lot of design in the browser, we're doing a lot of research in the browser, and that's coding, and it's really fun coding. So a lot of times it's throwaway code, and it's things that we're going to develop really quickly just to present a proof of concept, see if it can be done, show it to the client, see if they think they like it or not. Granted, we're throwing away code, but this is fun stuff. Prototyping is a blast. So that kind of comes into design in the browser here. We've all heard that. It's kind of a big catchphrase right now. You hear it in various, you hear it all over the place. It really can be implemented in a number of ways. And I've done 2 implementations of it, major implementations of it here at ISITE that were vastly different from one another, and I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. But some new tools and concepts that kind of come out of this that changes how we do our work. Content first and mobile first. For example, here could probably be on the same line because I really think that the 2 are so important, but they really tie in together really well. If you do your content first, you kind of have to think about mobile first. And when you do mobile first and content first, your HTML improves dramatically because like we talked about in the State of the Fed, When you're doing mobile first, you're not thinking about positioning pieces of content all over the place. You're actually just putting it in the DOM in the order that it makes sense as a document. Ultimately, that's what we're delivering. It's not, we're delivering a document with text, right? So we're doing it right. And when we're able to use content first, not lorem ipsum, but actual real sample of the content that, that we're going to need, we're able to identify, is this an aside, is this an article, is this a section, in a much more meaningful manner than if we're just using lorem ipsum with gibberish. Pretty big. This is something I'm particularly excited about. We're seeing people in UX and creative right now doing HTML and CSS, and it's not great, but it's awesome, right? Like they're learning a little bit about our world, and I love it. I love seeing the kind of breakdown of the traditional silos that we've had here at ISITE. We're seeing back-end developers getting involved in Fed getting involved in back-end development, and now we're even seeing it go outside of tech. I think it's fantastic. We're learning a lot about each other's roles, and when you learn about the roles that are around you, it makes you better at your particular job. So again, there's some different approaches with designing the browser. On Intel, this was a really big design in the browser site, and probably our first project where we really embraced this concept. There was more Photoshop in it. I don't think Photoshop needs to really necessarily go away. I think Photoshop is a great tool for sketching, and it's a great tool for photos, photography. We did a lot more of that, but it was more like I worked with Patrick, and he would kind of sketch out the basic concept and the skeleton, the framework, if you will, and then I would flesh it out in the browser. Oftentimes with him standing over my shoulder, and it's not as annoying as that sounds. But we would work really closely together and put together the final concept and deliver it to the client for revisions. Let me go back. On BMC, it was quite different. Joseph did an absolutely amazing job. Alex saw it too. He did all of his design in the browser. So he wrote some pretty complex CSS and some pretty good HTML to support it. He handed that off to us, and it's not really a handoff because he's still working in his HTML and we're working in ours. But the beautiful thing about it is that we were able to see exactly what he expected as far as behavior. So he had media queries, he had breakpoints, he had all these wonderful things, and perhaps it wouldn't be how we would write the code. In fact, it wasn't, but we were able to see exactly what he needed. And that was pretty cool. I don't think that there's I don't think that one approach is necessarily better than the others. I think it just depends on the team being assembled. But yeah, I think there's a lot of flexibility that we can use there. Cautions, we're still learning how to do design in the browser. Again, we're really good at the waterfall thing that we've done for so many years. And this is still waterfall in some regard, but I want to go over some cautions. We're still learning how to do it. It can be confusing to the client. This is 2014. Our clients have probably done multiple website projects. They're used to a specific way of seeing things done. They're used to a Photoshop comp, and they don't get it. It can be confusing to developers a little bit. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. It can be confusing to project managers for sure, especially in the way that the traditional milestones of how we conducted our projects in the past might not be there if we're doing this more iterative approach. And the key to it all really, truly is just communication. And that's the way it always is with any project and any problem that we have on the project. It's always lack of communication. So some specific pain points. I'm going to go through this one kind of quick because I got 10 minutes left. And if I'm speaking really fast, this was originally going to be a 45-minute presentation, and then I saw that this morning it was cut down to 25, so I'm kind of kicking ass here. So, okay, pain points. BMC, I had a question about 3 or 4 weeks into the process where I said, you know, where's the wireframes? And I kind of got some blank looks from the team. They said, we're not doing wireframes, we're doing page descriptive diagrams. And I said, sweet, that's great. What's a PDD? What's a page descriptive diagram? I had no idea. Kind of a pain point. So who's doing what? The other thing is that now, you know, UX being everyone's job, which is kind of a core concept in design in the browser and our more iterative way of approaching projects now, that gets kind of confusing. On BMC, this might be a slightly different example, but our UX guy wasn't really doing UX. Our creative guy was doing UX, but kind of wasn't. So it was a little bit of a confusing thing for us that we had to work through. I don't know if that's going to be something that's general to all HTML or all design in the browser projects or not. I highly doubt it. But that's one pain point that we came across. The PDD versus wireframe was another one. I'm not sold on PDDs yet. I don't know how they really help me in particular. I might just be, you know, so used to wireframes. I don't know. Someone else can talk about PDDs a lot better than I can, but basically a page descriptive diagram either augments or replaces a wireframe, and I'm not really hip to it yet. The no comp thing really kind of does hurt, and it makes you really change your approach on how you think about things. The entire team needs to embrace the idea that the comp is a living document that's constantly evolving from week to week. What I did to alleviate this pain point on a lot of the projects is I set up a recurring weekly meeting with everybody on both sides, whether that's the client and everybody on this side, and I would demonstrate progress. And when I did that, that really alleviated this pain point quite a bit. They would actually see what they're going to get. But when there is no comp, think about it from a client's perspective. Traditionally, they have this beautiful pixel perfect comp that they can take back to their constituents and stakeholders and see, this is the website we're going to get. Now take that away from the client and your point of contact at the client and imagine what they have to go through. It's kind of hard. So what it really requires is a lot of trust. We have to have an open and honest and genuine relationship with the client. They have to trust us quite a bit. And they have to know ISITE is going to deliver a kick-ass site for us. And that requires, again, communication. And a lot of that is through tech. Benefits, first off, efficiency. It's so much easier to handle revisions when you're doing design in the browser versus Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever tool. If the client says, look, I really don't like that shade of green that we're using on hover states for links, let's fix that. It takes in the traditional manner when we were using Photoshop, that's, you know, hours of edits, going through changing text color, and that's kind of ridiculous, right? When we're designing in the browser, that's a couple lines of code, saved, done. Very efficient for handling revisions. This is the biggest thing that I like. This is what I absolutely love about the process, is tech influences the direction very early and often. I get to build what I want. I mean, I at least have a big say into it. If I have to do another homepage carousel and drop-down menus, like, come on, you know? Like, we're better than this. We can push our clients. We can do really cool things. Let's push. So that's what I love about this. It's really a big step forward into doing great work. So case studies, I've got probably 5 minutes, so I'm cruising. First one is Intel. That was really our kind of flagship for this process. We explored things like data visualizations before we even knew what data we had to work with. We did tech before creative. It was kind of, everything was backwards. I worked almost full-time with Patrick and Guy, and the three of us worked very, very together. It was not very much handoff at all. I would come up with, hey, I want to use drag and drop for assigning priority. Let the user assign priority to things by using drag and drop. And Guy's question back to me was, well, what do you want to prioritize? I'm like, I don't know. Let's find something that the user needs to prioritize because that'd be really cool. Or look at this graph. It's really awesome. And what do we want to display in the graph? I don't know, but it's a really cool graph. So it was a really kind of fun way of going about things. The DX campaign was a 8-page site that Yosh was working on, and she comped it out in Photoshop. And this is kind of another design in the browser that wasn't quite designed in the browser, but it was an 8-page site, and I saw the comps, and they're beautiful. They don't, they kind of deviated from our normal header, footer, column navigation thing. It was a survey site, and I kind of thought to myself, why does this need to be 8 pages at all? Why don't we just do this with some, 1 page? We'll do a little JavaScript, some nice transitions to show the questions in a sequential order. I'll actually pull it up real quick, maybe. Anyway, it came together really well. What was originally going to be kind of a boring little survey became a pretty cool app. And if you go to isitedesign.com/dx, actually, I do have it up. I can't even show you the desktop view. Let's see if I can. There we go. This was actually really simple. I prototyped this out in about 2.5 hours. Rather than having this each being on its own page, we just created a little app that did this. And that's just simple CSS transitions and a very light amount of JavaScript to change the body class to tell you which class you're on. So kind of cool. Ski Hood Social was another one kind of like this. Yosh presented 2 comps to the client, and of course what happens when that occurs? They want to merge both of them, right? And you got this Frankenstein thing, and it was going to be a really painful thing for Yosh to try to do a new comp to marry those 2 concepts. And I thought, why don't I just do an HTML prototype really quickly and show that to the client? And I had some ideas about behavior and interactions and how it would work out. And it worked out really well. I know Moda and OHSU also have worked with some these same concepts in mind too, and we've had some pretty good success with it. Lastly, this is kind of an aside if we have time, and I think I kind of do. I have 2 or 3 minutes. This is a really big and new approach for ISITE, but as we've done the design in the browser, we've also kind of tossed around some new approaches and how we do things. For example, Alex and I on BMC did quite a bit of pair programming. I don't know if you've seen in the last month, you've probably seen he and I both at my desk coding away with 2 computers, but so it's not really pair, but we kind of challenged each other, and we would do like these mini sprints. So we had a function that we wanted to get done, say the navigation for mobile. He would do like the SCSS, I would do the JavaScript and HTML to support it. And we'd say, okay, let's see what we can get in 20 minutes. I think we can almost get it, prototyped out. And we'd sit and blast through it. And the really cool thing about that I learned is that, I've been doing this for 16 years in this industry, and I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I learned a lot from you in just, a couple days of working like that. There was a huge knowledge transfer both sides. Like, it could be just keyboard shortcuts. It could just be an application that you use, or just that dialogue. And I really would encourage that if you have the opportunity to work like that. Sorry, John, not you. But if you have the opportunity to do some pair programming like that, Clay's another example. On Ski Hood, we both sat down at his desk and worked through some things. He saw how I did it. I saw some things that he did, and you just kind of learn a little bit about your world. It was cool. So, new approaches. This is kind of an exciting time for tech and ISITE. We're really kind of tackling things in a different manner. We're getting some really cool and great work coming in, and It's not just it's not just CMS for a university anymore, right? Like we're doing some really cool and exciting stuff. So it's not possible on all projects, but if it is, do it. It's fantastic. Thanks, guys. I don't think there's time for this, so. Is there? Yeah, I mean, if there is, yeah.
Building trusts without the wireframes because you were using the PDDs. How do you go about doing that? Like, is it from a built-in relationship you already had when you go in fresh with this concept? I mean, how,
yes and no.
How have you?
Yes and no. So it takes a lot of, you kind of have to put on your, sales engineer hat when you're dealing with the client and push the concept a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, I referenced earlier successes that we've had with it and kind of sold it that way. And said, hey, this is going to be a little painful, might be a little different in spots, but trust us, this works really well. I think you're really going to like what you see. And then having that weekly demonstration, that recurring meeting that I talked about, that really helps a ton. So they actually see your progress as you go, and that's big.
Yeah, me and Jeremiah did working together, which was awesome for Handoff for SocialStream. I've also done that a lot with Alex, and I'd like to see that more between at least front end and back end and other areas. It's really helpful to get stuff done and understand different technologies too.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay.